Okay, hello YouTube. So a lot of people have been asking for me to make a tier list for the towns in Jeebus Cross. So I made one. This is it. Now, as for how I rated the towns that I would consider to be top tier, right? Like Necropolis and Conflux are the towns that have like the most cheats in a way, like the most ways to do a lot of objectives or break early, stuff like that. So for Necropolis, obviously tier 1 town, super OP. You can break really early. I've broken 114, 115, 116 with Necropolis multiple times. The big things are you can get Pandora's boxes that have vampires in them. You can just break immediately after. You can get a biome that has a couple estates, and you can just build vampires and break 115. Or you can just get a lot of skeletons, get animate dead, and break. Usually that strategy breaks 121 because you get more skeletons, but I have broken on 117 with a large skelly stack and animate, and I'm pretty sure you could break earlier as well if you're lucky. And lastly, Necropolis is the most consistent town in the game. You can play literally any map. If your map has no creature banks, no nothing on it, you're still fine. All you need are the 2 side towns and maybe a couple imp caches, because you can break anything with animate dead and just some skeletons. So because of its consistency and its ability to break week 1, yeah, it's the best. Now, throughout this chart, I didn't want to have like 8 tiers, but the one that's on the left is slightly better. So, for example, Necropolis is slightly better than Conflux, but they're both tier 1. Dungeon's better than Rampart. Tower is better than Fortress. Fortress is better than Castle. Inferno is better than Cove. So yeah, throughout the thing, it works like that. I just, for simplicity, I wanted to have less tiers. But yeah, so Conflux is slightly worse than Necropolis. Not quite as consistent. You do need some things on the map to make it work. This is one of my favorite towns to play because I just love playing Luna and using Firewall. It's not a very beginner-friendly town. It's quite difficult to learn to play this town because you have to know how to play Luna and exactly what she can do. And then you also have to be familiar with split maining, so having 2 mains. Basically since day 1. You want to be constantly doing fights with the combat hero, while Luna is also farming with Firewall. That's the most efficient way to play the town. But again, it's got lots of cheats, you know. Luna is the biggest cheat of all. She can do pickets for free, she can do conservatories for free. Just cast a couple firewalls and you're done. As long as you know how to use her, Luna is very powerful. She can break 115, 116. She can break week 1 against 2 hex breaks and slow stuff like that. Just a really good town. It also has good units for doing hives, lots of tanky elementals. Now for tier 2, Dungeon is the better of the 2. Now, Dungeon doesn't actually tend to break week 1, although it can if you're lucky. Usually with Dragon Caves is the week 1 thing. But the reason Dungeon is so strong is because it has the portal and the Mana Vortex buildings in the town. So if you get a couple labyrinths on your map, you can portal the Minotaurs, and you can also buy the Mino dwelling in the town, so you can get a giant power stack of Minotaurs. That's usually what you're going for in the majority of games. Sometimes you'll get a bunch of dragon caves, and then you can portal dragons instead. That's usually the earlier break, because you're never going to build a dragon cave in the town in Jeebus Cross. It just takes too much investment. But yeah, Dungeon can easily create a large army just from having creature dwellings. So it's less reliant on the map to be good, which makes it a very consistent town. Now Rampart, also, I usually call Rampart generic because it doesn't do anything special. It's just very consistent and just very well-rounded and good for everything, basically. They have the best tier 1 unit in the game, which is Centaurs. They have Dwarves, which are good for Hives because they're really tanky. They have Dendroids, which are also good for Hives because they're really tanky. And there's also some cheesy strategies you can use Dendroids for. Rampart is just, it's just consistent. That's why it's here. Of the towns down here, Rampart is very consistent, and that's why it's above them. Because you can do Hives, because the Dwarves, like I just said. You can do Pickets, because Ivar and Grand Elves outspeed Dogs. And Conservatories are quite easily done once you get Master Lore. How do you know? Lots of different strategies to go with it as well. So yeah, just a really good town. Now for tier 3, Tower recently got a gigantic buff in Jeebus Cross. So the Hoda devs recently added lamps, genie lamps, which when you take them, you get 4 to 7 Master Genies. Very strong, very good tempo map objective. But it's down here because it's not consistent. And consistency is a big thing in Jeebus Cross because the map is random and sometimes you get screwed. But with these towns, it's less likely that you're going to get screwed because they're kind of self-sufficient. But Tower can also really high roll. With the lamps, you can high roll hard. Like if you get 40 Master Genies, it's really, really strong. But you can also get maps that don't have lamps. And if that happens, then if you don't have any resets left, you're just kind of screwed. So really high top end, but it's a large range. It's either you're doing extremely good or you're doing really bad. Yeah. And then there's Fortress. Again, Tower is slightly better than Fortress because it's on the left. Fortress, again, has really good high roll, but if you get screwed by your map and you don't get any hives, kind of hard. The reason this town is good is because you can upgrade the Wyverns into Wyvern Monarchs, the Wyverns that you get from hives, and Monarchs are just a very strong unit. But if you're playing Fortress and you're unlucky enough not to have hives, which has happened to me quite often, it can definitely happen. Or you'll just have like one hive. It's not the best town to be playing when you don't have any hives. But if you get a lot of hives, very strong. Similar to Tower, but not quite as high rolly. And then there's Castle. I usually avoid playing this town. I find it to be very random. The problem with Castle is it relies very heavily on angels. The units themselves, you can't really take hives or pickets until you get angels. Unless you get a bunch of pikemen or you maybe get a cavalier dwelling, then you could do hives earlier. But yeah, it's generally a pretty slow town. But, again, if you're lucky, you get a bunch of Portal Glories on your map, and you get a bunch of angels, you can break week 1 with Castle. It's just, all 3 of these towns have one thing in common, you'll notice. They have really high potential, but they rely on their map to help them, right? And they rely quite heavily on the map, whereas these towns don't. So that's why they're in tier 3. Then down here in tier 4, Inferno is one of my favorite towns to play as well. Just because I love playing Armageddon. I think it's just fun. It's a good meme. But yeah, Inferno also gets wrecked by its map. But it can also... the problem with Inferno is it's... even on a good map, it doesn't quite reach the level of these towns. Like, these towns on a good map is much better than Inferno on a good map. So that's why it's down here. But going Afridi Sultan's Armageddon, still one of my favorite things to do in the game. Cove, also down here in tier 4. It's an awkward town. I used to play Annabelle a lot, but then they nerfed XP shop abusing, and they also nerfed pirates a little bit. They nerfed their ability to do hives as efficiently. So now I just always play Cassio. But the problem with Cassio is she can't really do hives without the support of like a Nyx fort. So if you get a map that's just a bunch of hives, but you have no external dwellings to help take them, it's really rough, really slow game. You'd have to build Nyxes in your own town, and then it might not even be enough. And then the high roll on Cove, it's nothing special, really. High rolling would be getting a bunch of pickets. Cassio can take pickets quite easily. And then using those pickets to take hives and just snowballing. It's just... again, even on a good map, it's nothing compared to these other towns. And then on the last tier, we got Smork tier. This is the worst town in the game. It's a difficult town to play, and then even if you're good at doing combat, the reason this town is difficult to play is all of their units, all of their early game units are squishy. So you always start Taraxar for the extra wolves. The problem with that, I mean, it is the best thing to go with, but you have to play fights flawlessly. If your dogs get hit once, you're done, basically. They're so squishy, and you need all of them to do stuff. So you have to have a really firm grasp of how to kite and how to take retaliations to avoid damage on your dogs. So yeah, it takes a certain skill level to play the town correctly, and even if you do, it's extremely reliant on the map. The town is very bad if you don't have a behemoth crag. It's just hard to farm everything. Pickets aren't too bad. Hives are nearly impossible because, again, all of your early game units are squishy. You have to buy a behemoth in your town before you can even think about doing a hive. So, yeah. You can still high roll. Ancient behemoths are good. If you get like 3 behe crags on your map, just go for ancient behes. Ancient behemoths are very strong. But it's so rare that you get more than 1 behe crag, or, you know, even 1 behe crag at all. So for that reason, it is bottom tier. So yeah, this is my tier list. I'll probably link an image for this picture in the description, and I hope you guys enjoyed the video, and I hope this helps some of you while betting for towns. Yeah, thanks for watching, dudes.